It was just a text. Just a simple message from my son, the boy I raised, the man I'd watched grow up and call me Mom all those years. But when I read those words, it felt like the ground beneath me shifted. "You're not family, you can't come on our cruise." That's all it said. That's all he gave me. And just like that, everything changed. Before I tell you what happened next, would you do me a favor? Hit that subscribe button, turn on the little bell, and let me know where you're watching from. It really helps us know where these stories are reaching. My name's Ruth. I'm 68 years old and live in a small town in North Carolina, where the summers are hot, the trees are tall, and the neighbors still wave when they drive by. It's the kind of place where people stay for generations. My family's roots run deep here. I spent my whole life raising my children, keeping the house in order, and putting my husband's career before my own. My days were filled with the simple things: coffee in the mornings, folding laundry, tending to the garden, watching the grandchildren grow. Life was comfortable, even if it wasn't glamorous, but that text? It turned my world upside down. I could hardly believe it. How could my son say something like that? He's been distant for a while, I'll admit. I've seen the little signs, snide comments, long silences, holidays where I wasn't even invited to the family dinners. But a text like that? It was like a slap in the face. And for what? What had I done to deserve this? To be told I wasn't even family anymore? I could have cried. I wanted to. But instead, I sat there, staring at that screen, my fingers gripping the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. Something inside me clicked. Anger. A lot of anger. But there was something else, too, a sense of betrayal I couldn't quite put into words. I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to sit idly by and let him get away with it. I've spent a lifetime giving, loving, and caring for my family. I don't deserve this. And I'm not going to let him think he can throw me away like yesterday's trash. You see, there's more to this story than just a text message. Much more. It's not about some stupid cruise. It's about a lifetime of mistakes, of secrets kept, of debts left unpaid. And as for me? I'm done being the one who always forgives, always forgets. No. This time, there will be consequences. I'll make sure of that. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when my son, Adam, was my whole world. I remember when he was little, running around the backyard, his little face covered in dirt but his eyes shining with laughter. I'd chase him around, and he'd squeal, "Catch me, Mama. Catch me." He always thought he was faster than me, even when he wasn't. Those were the good days, the days before everything changed. Before he grew up. It's funny how quickly time can slip away from you. One day, you're the one holding their hand through life, guiding them, teaching them right from wrong. And the next thing you know, you're standing on the sidelines, watching them make decisions that leave you feeling like an outsider. I thought I had done my part. I thought I'd given him everything I could, a stable home, a good education, and love that never ran out. But somewhere along the way, things began to change. I should have noticed it sooner. The subtle shifts. The way he stopped calling as much, the way he'd make excuses when I asked if he wanted to come over. Little things. At first, I told myself it was just life. Kids grow up, get busy, and start their own lives. But then I started to realize, he wasn't just busy. He was shutting me out. And I don't know when it started, but somewhere between those family dinners and quiet phone calls, I became less important to him. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself it was just a phase. After all, wasn't that what parents always said? He'll come around. But the distance kept growing, and I started to feel the sting. And then came the cruise. It wasn't some extravagant vacation, no. It was a simple family trip, something my husband and I had been planning for years. It was supposed to be a celebration, a chance for all of us to finally spend some quality time together after everything we'd been through. But Adam didn't even bother to invite me. Instead, I was left out, left behind, discarded like an afterthought. At first, I didn't think much of it. I assumed it was just another one of his selfish moments. But the more I thought about it, the more it didn't sit right. What kind of son does that to his own mother? How could he exclude me from something that was supposed to be about family? It wasn't just the cruise. It was everything. All the little things that added up to this grand betrayal. I sat with it for days, trying to make sense of it. What had I done wrong? Was it something I said? Or maybe it was something I didn't say. I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let it slide. He'd pushed me to the edge, and now there was no going back. There was a fire inside me now, a fire that had been burning for far too long. It wasn't just about the cruise. It was about everything he'd taken from me. The love, the time, the effort. All of it. And now, I was going to make sure he paid for it. I had my plan, and I was patient. Ruth, the kind, loving mother, was gone. Now, there was just a woman determined to right the wrongs. A woman who had nothing left to lose. I didn't start out looking for it, but sometimes, secrets have a way of finding you. I was sitting in the attic one afternoon, sorting through old boxes, trying to get rid of things I didn't need anymore. You know how it is when you're cleaning out your past: you stumble upon things you thought you'd forgotten. Old photographs. Letters. A few knickknacks that reminded you of someone long gone. I had my mind on other things when I found it. It was just a small envelope, yellowed with age, tucked behind a stack of old Christmas cards. No return address. Just my husband's handwriting on the front. At first, I didn't think much of it. But something made me pause, and for the first time in years, I felt my heart beat a little faster. Maybe it was the way it had been hidden so carefully. Or maybe it was just my instincts telling me this envelope wasn't like the others. I opened it, careful not to tear the fragile paper, and inside, I found a letter. Not a long one, just a few pages, written in neat handwriting that I didn't recognize. It wasn't from my husband. It was from someone else. Someone named Diane. My hands trembled as I read the letter. The words, though short, were clear. It was a letter from a woman who had been involved with my husband years ago, before we were even married. She wrote about a love affair, about how they had shared a life together, and how they had been planning to run away, until my husband chose me instead. My breath caught in my throat. I felt my world tilt again, just as it had with the text from Adam. This wasn't the first betrayal I'd experienced, but this one cut deep. I'd always known there were things about my husband's past that he hadn't shared with me, but this was something different. This was a secret that, until now, had been kept buried, but that wasn't the worst of it. No, the worst part was the final line of the letter, the one that I couldn't ignore. "You'll never know the truth, Ruth. He's been lying to you all these years. Adam isn't your son." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My hands shook so violently that the letter almost slipped from my grasp. I forced myself to take a deep breath, trying to process the words on the page. How could that be true? How could my son not be mine? I raised him, loved him, protected him like he was my own flesh and blood. Was it possible? Could this stranger's letter really be telling the truth? I spent the rest of the afternoon in a daze, staring at that letter like it held the answers to everything I'd ever wanted to know. It was a secret, and it was mine now. It wasn't the kind of thing you could ignore. Not when it had the power to shatter everything I'd ever believed, but there was one thing I knew for sure: this letter. This truth, it was going to change everything. And if I had to expose it to make Adam understand the consequences of his betrayal, I would. He would pay for what he'd done, and so would anyone who had a hand in keeping this secret from me. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about justice. About making sure he never forgot what he had done to me. I knew I had to be careful. One wrong move, and everything would fall apart. This wasn't something I could rush. I had to plan every step, every word. Adam's betrayal had opened a door I didn't want to walk through, but now that it was open, I couldn't ignore what was inside. The first thing I did was reach out to an old friend, someone who owed me a favor. Marissa had been my neighbor for years before she moved to Florida, and even though we hadn't kept in touch much, she still remembered me well. I needed information I couldn't get on my own. I wasn't stupid. Adam would be watching me now, looking for signs of weakness or anything that might make him think I'd try to confront him directly. I needed to be subtle. I asked Marissa to look into something for me, just a small favor. Nothing that would tip her off to my plans, nothing that would make her ask too many questions. She was a private investigator now, the kind of woman who knew how to dig deep without raising suspicion. And she had a way of making people talk. "I'll see what I can find, Ruth," she said over the phone, her voice still familiar after all these years. "But you need to be careful. People are watching. Especially with the kind of stuff you're asking about. I know, I said, my voice colder than I intended. Just get me what I need. You'll be well paid, I promise. She agreed, and we hung up. The second I put down the phone, I felt that familiar heat rise in my chest again. My blood boiled as I thought about Adam, his cruel text, the way he'd treated me. He had no idea what was coming. No idea that his actions were about to set off a chain of events that would shake his world to its very core, but that wasn't enough. I needed something else, something more concrete. I spent the next few days combing through old documents. Tax returns. Family photos. Anything that might give me leverage. I wasn't about to just sit around and let Adam continue on with his life, pretending everything was fine. If he was going to cut me out, I'd make sure he couldn't escape the consequences. There was one thing that bothered me, though. As I sifted through the papers, I came across a few things I hadn't expected to find, things that made my heart race with unease. There were accounts I didn't recognize, transactions that didn't add up, and one particular name that appeared more than once, Diane. My hands froze as I stared at the documents. The same Diane from the letter. The one who had written about my husband's affair. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Could it be true? Had my husband been hiding more from me than just the affair? Had he been involved in something illegal? My mind spun as I pieced together the information. Unsure of what it meant, but certain of one thing, whatever it was. It was going to help me in the end. I felt a sick sense of satisfaction as I locked the papers away in my drawer. My plan was coming together. Slowly, but surely. I still hadn't made the final decision on how to approach Adam with what I knew. The truth of his parentage was a powerful weapon, but I wasn't sure I wanted to use it just yet. There were other things to consider. Other people who needed to pay for what they had done, and for the first time in a long time, I felt in control. The storm was coming, and I was ready. The days passed slowly, each one dragging on as I waited for the pieces of my plan to fall into place. I couldn't rush it, no. Everything needed to be calculated, precise. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had underestimated the weight of Adam's betrayal. It wasn't just the exclusion from the cruise, it was everything he had taken from me over the years. His indifference, his coldness, his complete disregard for the sacrifices I'd made for him. He needed to feel the weight of that, to know what it was like to be abandoned by the person you trust most, and so? I began to move like a shadow. Carefully. Quietly. Every action, every decision, took place behind closed doors. Away from prying eyes. No one knew what I was doing, not Adam, not even my closest friends. If they did, they would have warned me to stop, to let it go. But I couldn't. Not now. Not after everything. I had my contacts, the ones who owed me favors, the ones who would help me set things in motion without asking too many questions. I spoke to Marissa again, this time asking her to dig deeper into Diane's background. Who was she really? What did she have on my husband? There had to be more to the story, something I hadn't uncovered yet. In the meantime, I started looking into Adam's financial situation. The family's money had always been something of a mystery to him, something he hadn't cared to understand. But I knew where to look. I knew what questions to ask. I found out that he had started taking out loans, big ones. Loans he hadn't bothered to tell me about, loans that would ruin him if the wrong people found out. I smiled to myself as I put the pieces together. Adam thought he could shut me out, pretend I didn't matter, but I had all the power now. His secrets were about to catch up with him, and there wasn't a thing he could do to stop it. Then there was the matter of my husband. I hadn't told him about the letter yet, about Diane's claim that Adam wasn't his son. I didn't know if I ever would. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had to keep him in the dark, at least for now. He wouldn't understand. He would try to fix things, smooth everything over. That wasn't what I wanted. I didn't want things to go back to the way they were before. I wanted justice. I wanted Adam to feel what I felt when I read that text. The plan was simple, really. Get Adam into a position where he had no choice but to make a confession. Make him believe that his life was falling apart, that everything he had built was about to crumble. Once he was on his knees, begging for mercy, that's when I would hit him with the truth. The secret of his parentage. The affair. Everything. I would be the one in control. I would make sure of it, There were risks, of course. There always are when you're playing a dangerous game like this. But I had nothing left to lose. And that gave me an edge. An edge Adam didn't know about. I could hear the ticking clock in my head, the seconds slipping away as I waited. The calm before the storm was almost over. Soon, Adam would be forced to confront the choices he'd made, and when he did, he would know what it felt like to be betrayed. He would understand the pain of being cast aside, of being treated like nothing, and that was just the beginning. I could feel it in the air, something was changing. Adam had become more distant, more guarded in the past few weeks, and I knew it wasn't just coincidence. He could feel the tension, too. The walls were closing in on him, and he didn't even know why. But I did. I was the one pulling the strings now, watching from the shadows as his world began to shift. It wasn't enough to just wait for Marissa to gather information. I had to do more, make sure Adam knew he was being watched, that his every move was being tracked. That's why I started sending anonymous tips to the people he trusted. Small things at first, rumors about his financial instability, whispers about his questionable business dealings. Just little seeds of doubt that would grow into something much bigger. At first, he didn't react. But as time went on, I saw the signs. The way his phone started buzzing more frequently with calls he wouldn't answer. The nervous glances he'd cast over his shoulder when he thought no one was watching. He was starting to crack, and it was beautiful to watch. He had no idea that all of this, his growing paranoia, his distrust, was the result of my careful planning. The best part? He didn't even know why things were falling apart. He had no clue that I was the one pulling the strings. It made everything more satisfying, knowing that he was looking over his shoulder, questioning everyone and everything, but never once suspecting me. It was all coming together, piece by piece. The financial ruin. The emotional toll. The lies. It wasn't just the loans anymore. I had tipped off a few of Adam's business partners about some discrepancies in his recent dealings. Nothing that would immediately expose him, but just enough to make them question his integrity. I knew he was feeling the pressure. I could see it in his eyes when we crossed paths, how he avoided direct eye contact, how his words seemed more calculated, less genuine. It wasn't just the business stuff, either. The social circles he moved in were starting to question his reliability. People were asking questions. People he didn't expect. And I wasn't done yet. I was just getting started. There was something I could feel in the pit of my stomach, an unease that wouldn't go away. The deeper I dug into Adam's life, the more I uncovered. Every time I thought I knew everything, something new would pop up. Like the mysterious transactions I found in his bank account, small payments, nothing too suspicious on the surface, but enough to raise red flags. It was clear he was hiding something bigger than I could have imagined, and then there were the late-night conversations he started having with his wife, Jenna. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see the body language. The tension. The way she looked at him, as if she were waiting for him to crack. And he did. A few days ago, I overheard him arguing with her in the kitchen, their voices rising. "You have to stop this, Adam," Jenna said, her voice trembling with frustration. "People are starting to notice. You're going to get caught." But Adam wasn't listening. He never listened to anyone but himself. I couldn't help but feel a flicker of satisfaction. Watching him crumble, watching him squirm, it was everything I'd hoped for. But even as I enjoyed the sight of his life falling apart, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that kept whispering in the back of my mind. Was I going too far? Was this really justice, or was it just me getting lost in my own anger and need for revenge? It didn't matter. I had come too far to turn back now. The storm was building, and there was no stopping it. Soon, Adam would be forced to confront the truth about his past, about his lies, about everything he had done to me and to others. And when he did, I would be there, standing tall, watching him break. It was inevitable, really. The more I made my presence felt in the corners of Adam's life, the tighter the noose got. He wasn't stupid, he knew something was off. His paranoia had grown over the weeks, his nerves frayed to the point of snapping. He could feel the walls closing in, the whispers that followed him everywhere, the creeping realization that his life was unraveling, and he had no idea who was behind it. But today, he was going to find out. Today, the truth would come crashing down on him. I knew it was time for the confrontation, the one he didn't see coming. The way he'd been acting around me, avoiding me, giving me that cold look like I was some stranger, told me it was finally the moment. I'd been waiting for the right time to show him who really had the power here, and it was now or never. I invited him over for dinner. Nothing fancy, just a simple meal like we used to have. A little lasagna, a side of green beans, and a quiet evening in the old dining room, with the worn table that had seen so many family dinners over the years. I could feel the tension hanging in the air before he even stepped through the door. The way he looked at me, like I was a threat, like I was someone to be feared. He walked in, his eyes already scanning the room, his hand twitching at his side as if he was ready to bolt at any moment. I gave him a warm smile, the kind I used to give him when he was younger, when everything was fine. But he didn't return it. His face was stone, unreadable. "Sit down, Adam," I said, my voice calm, but there was an edge to it. He hesitated for a moment before pulling out a chair. We were both silent as I served him a plate, the clink of the silverware echoing in the quiet room. He took a bite, but he didn't look at me. I could tell he was waiting for me to speak, to say something that would explain why I'd been making his life a living hell. But I wasn't going to explain myself. Not yet. Instead, I let the silence stretch, thick and suffocating. Finally, he broke the tension. "What's this all about, Mom? What are you trying to pull?" His words were sharp, accusing. I could feel his anger boiling beneath the surface, but he wasn't ready to confront me fully yet. He was trying to maintain control, but I could see the cracks starting to show. He was scared. I took a deep breath, my gaze never leaving his face. "I think you know exactly what this is about, Adam." He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting away for a moment before meeting mine again. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, you know," I said softly, my voice a little colder now. "The lies. The secrets. The way you've treated me like I don't matter. You think I didn't notice? You think I didn't see what you were doing?" His face tightened, and for a moment, I thought he might stand up and leave. But he didn't. He stayed, his fists clenched on the table, and the words I knew he didn't want to say hung in the air between us. But I wasn't done. "Not by a long shot. I know everything, Adam," I continued, leaning forward slightly. "About the loans. About your little business dealings. About the lies you've been telling people. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about your past. About who you really are." His expression shifted, confusion flickering in his eyes. "What the hell are you talking about?" I could feel the power building inside me, the satisfaction of finally being in control of this moment. "I'm talking about your father's secret. The affair he had years ago. The one that led to your birth. I've known for a while, Adam. And now, I'm giving you the chance to come clean." His face paled, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. "You're lying," he whispered, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "I'm not lying," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I have proof. I have everything I need to expose you for the fraud you are. And if you don't come clean, I'll make sure the whole world knows the truth. Your business partners, your wife, everyone. They'll all know what you really are." He stood up suddenly, knocking his chair back. His eyes were wide, his face contorted with rage and panic. "You can't do this. You can't," but I was already standing, too. I stepped closer, keeping my voice low but steady. "I can do whatever I want, Adam. You've made me feel invisible for so long, like I didn't matter. Now, you're going to know what it feels like to be in my shoes. The only question is, how far are you willing to go to protect your lies?" His breath came in short gasps, his hands trembling as he backed away. "This isn't over, Mom. You'll regret this." I watched him leave, his anger and fear trailing behind him like a shadow. As he stormed out of the house, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The storm had finally hit, and I had been the one to make it happen, but I wasn't done. Not yet. I didn't expect Adam to crumble so quickly, but as I watched him leave my house, his face flushed with panic, I knew the seed had been planted. The confrontation had been necessary, but it was only the first step. I had made sure to push him to the edge, to make him realize that everything he had worked for, everything he thought he could keep hidden, was on the brink of collapse. But now the real work began. Over the next few days, I watched as everything around him started to fall apart. He couldn't hide the stress from his wife, Jenna, or his business partners. I saw him on the phone more than ever, his conversations more urgent, his words frantic. He tried to patch things up, tried to cover his tracks, but the damage had already been done. The whispers had started. The doubts were planted. I wasn't the only one who had been watching. I had made sure to reach out to a few key people, people who had influence in his life, who could make sure his world crumbled under the weight of his lies. One by one, they took their shots. I didn't have to do the dirty work myself. All I had to do was sit back and watch the chaos unfold. Marissa had come through for me, too. She had dug deep into Adam's finances, into his past. She found things I hadn't even expected, things that would destroy him if anyone ever got hold of them. I had copies of it all now, documents, photos, emails, proof of his deception. And if I needed to, I could use it all to push him even further. But I wasn't ready to make that move yet. No, I had something else in mind. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction every time I saw him out of the corner of my eye. His usual confidence was gone, replaced with a look of desperation. People were starting to question him. He was no longer the man he once was, he was a cornered animal. And I had made sure to corner him. Then came the phone call. It was late one evening. And I was sitting in my rocking chair, the familiar creak of it lulling me into a quiet contemplation. I didn't expect Adam to call. Not after everything that had happened. But he did. And when I saw his name flash across the screen, my pulse quickened. I let the phone ring twice before I answered. There was no rush. I was in control now, Mom. His voice was tight, almost choking. I need to talk to you. I leaned back in my chair, a small smile tugging at my lips. About what, Adam? You don't have anything left to say to me. I've made mistakes, he said, his voice low. I didn't think. I didn't think it would go this far. I could hear the cracks in his voice, the vulnerability that he had so carefully hidden for so long. It almost felt good to hear him admit his mistakes, to hear him sound so small, so weak. Did you really think you could treat me like that and get away with it? I asked softly, my tone deceptively calm. Did you think I wouldn't find out about the lies? About the secrets? You've always thought you were untouchable, Adam. But you were wrong. You've made me feel invisible for so long, like I didn't matter. Well, guess what? I matter. And now you're going to learn that. There was silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought he might hang up. But then he spoke again, his voice breaking. I don't know what to do anymore, Mom. Everything's falling apart. Good, I said, my words sharp, cutting through the silence. You're finally realizing what I've known for a long time. That you can't run from the consequences forever. That's what happens when you betray the people who love you. You lose everything. He didn't respond right away, and I could tell he was struggling to keep himself composed. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then the reality of what he had done hit me again. And any pity I might have had quickly vanished. I'm not going to beg you for forgiveness, he said, his words strained. I just want it to end. I'll do whatever you want. Just make it stop. I chuckled darkly. It's too late for that, Adam. You had your chance to make things right, and you blew it. Now, you'll live with the consequences of your actions. Don't worry, though. You'll learn what it's like to lose everything. I hung up the phone without another word, my heart pounding in my chest. The pieces were all falling into place now. He had nowhere to turn, no one to help him. The truth had come out, and he was reaping what he had sown, but I wasn't done. I wasn't finished with him. It had been weeks since that phone call, but Adam was still reeling, still desperately trying to salvage what was left of his crumbling empire. I watched it all unfold from the sidelines, careful not to reveal too much, too soon. The tension in the air was palpable now. People were starting to turn on him, his business partners, his friends, even his wife. They could all feel the shift. They knew something was wrong, but none of them knew who had orchestrated it all. I didn't need to do anything else. Everything I had set in motion was playing out exactly how I wanted it. Adam was isolated, vulnerable. I had exposed his lies, his deceit, and now it was time for the final blow. I sat in my old chair one afternoon, staring out the window at the fading light. The house was quiet, as it often was these days. I had spent years making sure my family was comfortable, safe, and loved, and now it was just me. Alone, but not lonely. I had taken control of my own destiny, something I hadn't done in years. I was no longer the one who forgave, who let things slide. Now, I was the one who made people pay for their actions. And Adam? He was about to learn that lesson the hard way. I received an email from Marissa that evening. The final piece I needed. Everything had fallen into place, and now I held the power to crush Adam completely. It was all in the email: bank records, hidden assets, everything I could use to ensure that Adam would never recover from the fallout. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction as I read through the documents. He had no idea what was coming. He thought he had been so clever, hiding things from me, but I was smarter. I was patient. And now, I had him exactly where I wanted him. The next day, I arranged to meet with one of his closest business associates. His name was Frank, and he was the kind of man who always acted like he had everything under control. He had no idea I'd been watching him, listening to his conversations, picking up on his weaknesses. I had carefully made sure that Frank had been looped in on the details of Adam's financial troubles. His loyalty was more to the money than to Adam himself, and I knew that Frank was the kind of person who would do anything to protect his own interests. We met at a small cafe, just outside of town. It was a quiet place, tucked away from the prying eyes of the world. I didn't need anyone to see what was about to happen. Ruth, Frank said, his voice low. I don't know what this is all about, but I'm not in the business of making enemies. You know that. I leaned forward slightly, my hands folded on the table, my gaze unwavering. I know, Frank. And I'm not asking you to make enemies. I'm asking you to make a choice. A choice that could save you, or ruin you. He looked uneasy, but I could see the glint of greed in his eyes. It was always there, lurking beneath the surface. You're in deep with Adam, aren't you? I asked. You've been helping him cover up his mess for years. Hiding money, making deals behind people's backs. You think no one knows? Frank stiffened, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. What do you want from me, Ruth? If this is about Adam, no, I interrupted, my voice cold and firm. This is about you, Frank. This is about making sure you stay on top. You don't want to be dragged down with him, do you? I slid a manila folder across the table toward him, watching as his eyes flicked over it. He knew what it was before he even opened it, proof of his involvement in Adam's schemes, proof of the corruption he had helped cover up. I've given you everything you need, Frank, I continued. All you have to do is make sure Adam's finished. And I'll make sure you walk away clean. His eyes flicked back up to meet mine, a decision playing out in his mind. I saw the fear in his eyes, but there was something else too, a flicker of greed. He didn't want to lose everything, didn't want to be caught in Adam's wake. I'll do it, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. But you better keep your end of the deal. I smiled, knowing I had won. Don't worry, Frank. I always keep my promises. By the time Frank left, I was already making plans for the final stage of my revenge. It was all coming to an end now. Adam had been so focused on fighting his battles, trying to patch things up with his wife, with his business partners, that he never realized who had been working behind the scenes. He thought he could fool everyone, but in the end, it was me who had the last word. That I made sure that Frank would leak the information to the right people. The financial fraud. The hidden assets. The lies. Once the truth came to light, Adam would have nothing left. His business would be destroyed. His reputation would be shattered. His wife? She would leave him the moment she realized what he'd done. Everything he had built, everything he had ever known, would fall apart in an instant. And he would be left with nothing, no one to blame but himself. I didn't need to see the aftermath. I didn't need to watch him fall. I already knew what would happen. The punishment would be swift, and the consequences would be permanent, but as I sat alone in the quiet of my home, I felt a strange sense of peace. I had done what needed to be done. Justice had been served, and I could finally let go of the anger that had consumed me for so long. Adam had learned the hard way that betrayal has a price. And in the end, I was the one who made sure he paid. It's funny how things work out sometimes. The storm I had set in motion, the one I had carefully crafted, had passed, and now, here I was, standing in the ruins of it all. I don't know if I feel relief or if it's just exhaustion, but I do know one thing: I've learned a lot in the last few months. About betrayal, about power, about standing up for yourself when the world tells you to sit down. I could have forgiven him, could have let it all slide like I did so many times before. But this time, I chose something different. I chose justice. Adam's life unraveled just as I knew it would. The lies, the manipulation, it all came to light, and it all came crashing down. His business partners left him. His wife walked away, too, once she learned the truth. The rumors spread like wildfire, and before long, he was nothing but a shadow of the man he used to be. And I watched it all unfold from a distance. I didn't need to get involved anymore. I had already made sure he would feel the consequences. That was enough for me. Now, looking back, I realize it wasn't just about the revenge. It was about reclaiming my power, my dignity. It was about no longer letting people treat me like I didn't matter. I had spent so many years being the one who forgave, the one who kept everything together, while everyone else took and took without giving anything back. But that stopped. I stopped it. And I don't regret a single moment of it. It's strange, though, how you can feel both victorious and empty at the same time. I guess that's the cost of justice. In the end, I got what I wanted, but it didn't fill the space that Adam had left behind. I suppose nothing ever could, but here's the lesson, the one I want to leave with you. Sometimes, standing up for yourself isn't about being the bigger person. Sometimes, it's about making sure the people who hurt you face the consequences of their actions. And sometimes, you don't need to forgive them. You just need to make sure they never forget what they did to you, and I know this for sure: I'll never be invisible again. Before I end this story, I want to ask you something. If you've been through something similar, or if you've ever been hurt by someone you loved, please share your story in the comments. And if you found any strength in mine, would you do me a favor? Hit that subscribe button and turn on the little bell so you won't miss the next one. Your support really means a lot to me. Thank you for taking this journey with me.